community is a group or association of populations of two or more different species occupying the same geographical area in a particular time. Ecological community can be characterized by their structure or the types and numbers of species present. This community structure varies in time and space and can experience changes in structure and composition over time. Sometimes, these changes are induced by environmental disturbances, such as volcano eruption, earthquakes, storms, fires, and climate change. This process of gradual and seemingly directional change in community structure through time is called succession, and there are two types of succession. Primary succession occurs on previously unvegetated terrain. Formation of new islands, new volcanic rock, and land formed from glacial retreat provides a habitat that can be colonized for the first time by mosses or lichens. The site conditions change slowly in response to the vegetation as soil develops. A good example of primary succession is the evading of a land entirely made of hardened lava after a volcanic eruption. In the beginning, the land will be barren, then soon some small plant species will colonize the land, which are called the pioneer species, followed by small shrubs, less woody plants, and finally trees. With the progression of each stage, more rock get withered, organic materials are added to it, increasing the amount of soil which finally supports the climax community. Another type of succession is called secondary succession, which occurs after a disturbance disrupts ecosystem processes and removes part of the existing biota. Disturbances such as forest thinning, floods, fire, and wind can all lead to secondary succession. A classic example of secondary succession occurs in oak and hickory forest cleared by wildfire. Wildfires will burn most vegetation and kill those animals unable to flee the area. Their nutrients, however, are returned to the ground in the form of ash. Thus, even when areas are devoid of life due to severe fires, the area will soon be ready for new life to take hold. Secondary succession is usually much quicker than primary succession due to the following reasons. First, there is already an existing seed bank of suitable plants in the soil. Second, root systems undisturbed in the soil, stumps, and other plant parts from previously existing plants can rapidly regenerate. Lastly, the fertility and structure of the soil has also already been substantially modified by previous organisms to make it more suitable for growth and colonization.
Ecological succession was first introduced by botanists E. Warming and Hendrik Hovels. For many years, different theories came up addressing that succession is a process in which species composition change through time. During 1916, Frederick Clements developed a theory known as monoclimax hypothesis. Monoclimax hypothesis states that succession represents the gradual and progressive development of the community to the climax stage. In 1954, Frank Igler proposed initial floristic composition. This states that succession is dependent on the particular species that colonize the site and the order they arrive. In 1977, Joseph Connell and Ralph Slater explained succession with three models. The first model is a facilitation model. This model states that late-stage species depends on the early-stage species for their success. The second model is the inhibition model. This model shows that the first species to arrive holds the site against all invaders, and the space will only be available to other species when the first species dies. The third model is the tolerance model. This model shows that later stage species can live together with early stage species. After Connell and Slater, the search of succession was continued by ecologists. According to J. Philip Grimm, plants have three primary plant strategies: competitive, stress-tolerant, and ruderal or rapid propagation. Our species can rapidly colonize sites. They are small and are short-lived. C species are the ones that compete for resources, and S species are species that favors limited resources. Fakhri-Bezaz, to understand plant succession, he focused on how the characteristics of seed dispersal, storage, germination, and species photosynthetic and growth respond to light and water availability. The model of Michael Houston and Thomas Smith also focused on the resources of light and water availability. They showed that temporal shift in species dominance happen when there are changes in light availability. David Tillman, his model of succession is called resource ratio hypothesis. This model enables plants to compete for resources like nitrogen and light. Although many hypotheses were presented, the focus today is how adaptations of individual species can influence species interaction and distribution under changing environmental conditions. Autogenic changes are caused by endogenous factors, meaning the succession are caused by the plant themselves. Several aspects that lead to these changes caused by plants are light captured by leaf, production of detritus, water and nutrient uptake, nitrogen fixation, and anthropogenic climate change. Autogenic succession is a secondary succession because of pre-existing plant life. Species diversity changes during succession because of species colonization and replacement. During early phases of succession, new species colonize the site, making the diversity high. However, during the middle stages of succession, new species colonize the site. The dominant species are being replaced by the new ones. Growth rate also affects succession. If growth rates of new species are low, then the displacement process moves slowly and the period of coexistence is extended. But when the growth rates are fast, then the displacement occurs quickly.
Heterotrophic species are organisms that cannot create their own food and relies on the organic substances available, like plants and animals. These organisms are also involved in the succession. The common example would be decomposition, wherein a community of animals or plants take over another community by colonization or replacement. For example, a dead tree was found lying in the middle of the forest. It will become the start of a succession of colonists and will be their source of nutrients in their new home. Wood-eating animals would be the first to take advantage of the log, then followed by fungi and bacteria that would grow on the soft parts of the wood. As it decays, more species will take the opportunity to access nutrients and shelter. However, once the structure of the log changes, it will also affect the animal life. Phylogenic changes patterns the succession in different time scales. Fluctuations in the environment that happens in a repetitive manner in a span of an organism's lifetime do not actually affect the growth of species in community. However, it will affect the secondary succession. But longer shifts in the environmental conditions may actually affect the dominance of a certain species within a community.
The Earth has changed greatly since 4.6 billion years ago. Lands have emerged, and some broke into continents. Mountains, seas, ice sheets, all of these have changed, and these changes affected the climate and other environmental conditions. As these conditions changed, so did the distribution and abundance of plant and animal species. Some evolved, some replaced, and some disappeared. Only records of their past communities remain either as fossils, bones, insect exoskeleton, plant parts, or pollen grains. Paleoecologists studied this distribution and abundance of ancient organisms and their relationship to the environment. Such is the case during the Pleistocene, wherein it was the period of great climate fluctuations in the world. Ice sheets advance and retreated, so does the biota. During the interglacial period, when the cold stage sets in, tundra-like vegetations are dominant. As glaciers retreated, light-demanding trees advance. When the climate warmed, trees are replaced by shade-tolerant species. We can see here how the biota advanced and retreated as climate and conditions change over geological time. According to Clements, a community is a quasi-organism made of independent species. On the other hand, Gleason saw the community as an arbitrary concept wherein species respond independently to the underlying features of the environment. Communities composed of coexisting species are a consequence of the spatial pattern of the landscape, wherein each species has a continuous response or an overlapping pattern of species distribution. An example would be tree communities in different elevations and slope positions in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Species respond to a wide array of environmental factors and interactions among organisms and influence the nature of those responses. Such is the beauty in studying ecology.